Hello and welcome to your Sensei Spiritismo class on spirit guides. So today we're going to go into what it means to be in participation or partnership with your Centinela. It's really like returning to your innocence. And there is a time where you're working and you're working and you're working to build that bond. As that bond becomes stronger and stronger, you'll know that you're on the right path because as you connect and deepen with your Centinela, you'll naturally start to feel at peace. You'll feel a sense of clarity in your direction, and you'll begin to start the process of opening your life path. The Misterios are very large beings, and they command the direction of your soul. And the soul is a unity between you and the divine. When we reach for the divine, or we want to be connected with the divine, our mysteries give us access to that connection. And at first, the mysteries work with us to address some of the major problems and confusions and karmas in life. As that beautiful experience unravels and unfolds and unfolds and unravels, slowly but surely, your life begins to open up. Your life begins to open up to this question: who am I? What is my purpose? How do I be? And where am I going? These questions begin to become answered by the connection with the Centinela. That's one phase. The other phase is to be in an experience of flow and peace. And when I say flow, I don't mean that there's no problem and that things aren't difficult. But the Centinela gives you direct resolution to the problems at hand. The Centinela can command the changes that need to be handled immediately. Finances, communications, job, relationship. These smaller aspects of your life, you can begin to master without that larger connection to divinity. If you have that larger connection to divinity without the bond of the Centinela, people become detached. And there is a system that's known as the Maslow's pyramid hierarchy of needs. That hierarchy of needs is one of the most important tools to look and analyze to see where you are at in the stage of development with your life. When people have a spiritual bond with a mystery or a deity or what they believe is the divine, it's simple to ignore and to bypass the hierarchy of needs. So the Maslow's pyramid, the hierarchy of needs, actually is what makes Sensei unique, because we use the Centinela to establish power in the hierarchy of needs. We implement the quadro, and we implement the spiritual bond with your head spirit, your shoulder spirit, to give you access to the divine. Really, if you have access to the divine without establishing the hierarchy of needs, what happens is what's called a spiritual bypass. And a spiritual bypass is when you have feelings and experiences that you've overcome and transcended the problems of life. And this is where spirituality can become poisonous to people, because it can end up leaving the things that are important in your life aside. And the bypass is like to have an elevated experience all the time, even though these very important wrongs to human development are not addressed. You see this with transformation, you see this in the coaching community, and you see this in the spiritual community, where people have the experience of greatness, but they lack the power to change and to affect the immediate problems at hand. So Sanse allows us to stabilize our life and to commit to being a good person and a strong person and a successful person, which makes our tradition a little less transformative and more shamanic. So shamans and priests, mambos, humans, the old ways, tend to not be able to provide their spiritual teachings and or treatments to people unless they are also viewed as very powerful in their life. This is why if you look back at the old ways, the chief who managed many things was also a business person and could also be the shaman. And the reason for this is because if you are great at what your path in life is, and you can effectively negotiate with people and include people and manage the wars or the tribal occurrences, be a part of the council, you've built trust up with the community so that you can then be trusted to do the otherworldly work as well. We say in Sanse that what you have in your life is determined by who you're being, and who you're being is determined by the connection with your Sentinella. So the Maslow's pyramid starts with the basic foundation of learning basic health and what they say humiliation. Now, I know that sounds funny, but a child must learn certain things are not correct and certain things are correct. And how the human develops that understanding is by knowing what is humiliating and knowing what is not. This is why a sociopath it develops in early, that's a trait that develops in early childhood, because humiliation was never learned. And if you can't learn humiliation to be humiliated by certain things, then you don't have compassion or empathy for others. If you don't experience it as a problem for yourself, you can't conceive it as a problem for another. So not hurting animals, not doing certain things that lead to your health. And you see this in religions everywhere, where there's basic health codes, basic things: wash your hands, speak kindly to people, conflict resolution. All of that's developed in early childhood. That basis is the foundation that gives somebody, when they're developing, that second level in the hierarchy of needs. That is food, home, So food, shelter, those are the basic needs. Food, shelter, and of course, in our culture, education. That's still at that base rung. Even that, though, cannot be really developed until humiliation is developed. So as you know, there are certain pieces of our work and also certain pieces of many other spiritual practices that will be geared towards humiliating the student. And what it is it's bringing a sense of humbleness. To be humble, to be grateful for food, to be grateful that you have a home, to be grateful that you have the basic needs provided for you. The Sentinella grounds those needs and also teaches you what is your code of honor, what is right for you, what is wrong for you. Going up the hierarchy of needs is the second rung is education. Education to develop, of course, in the old ways, education developed your gift. Yeah. This day, we just have like many, like a large platform for education, which is fine because later on in life, you can pick and choose what your direction in life is. Education is a primary structure. From education, a human develops the capacity to work in relationship. Relationship in the family, relationship with friends, and an understanding of the human develops from an I space, me, as a child, to a we. And that comprehensive development in the mind is so very important because we don't stand alone. We do always work in a group. Whether if you have family or not, the group and understanding that the group and that you are a part of it and that you're not the center of everything is maybe something that a lot of Americans and Europeans could go back and learn about and really continue to consciously as an adult go back to that stage of development and question, how much do I contemplate everything based on myself rather than based on the community that I'm a part of? From that, relationships get carved. There's a sense of teacher and student. There's a sense of law and respect. There's a sense of how do you interact in the society that you're a part of. From that develops that third rung in the Maslow's pyramid hierarchy of needs, which is career. This is where people get confused, and this is where most people top out with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Because the third rung is career. The fourth rung everybody wants to leap to, which is relationship. Love, intimacy, and partnership. Love, intimacy, and partnership and marriage cannot be developed without career developed first. So what we see often is adults are confused. They're like, I'm doing all my spiritual work. I'm doing all of this stuff. I don't understand why I can't make my marriage work. Why, I'm having issues with my children. Why things don't blossom. And it's because you bypassed that rung and you went towards relationship first. What allows us to do that is fantastical thinking. Spirituality can cause fantastical thinking. So we always like to use the Maslow's pyramid of hierarchy of needs to have people have a time where they can kind of sit back and analyze, did I bypass certain parts of my career and try to live in this fantasy world, like this Disney fantasy world of that your livelihood and that your stability and that your connection to community is based on your lover or your husband. And you see this with men and you see it with women. Men like to play the hero and women like to play the victim. okay? So we need to realize that healthy relationship gets manifested from a healthy self. That requires that basis of that you have food, that you have shelter, that you have your basic needs met, that you know how to interact with others, and then you have a career. So your finances, your taxes, your career path, and this is where we like to take our students and we like to teach them how to negotiate and to work with their bosses and to work with the people that are contracting them for their way they make money, to work with negotiation, to really get them to a place where they feel stable, where you look at your job and you look at your life and you're like, I know that I'm stable. I know that the way my values work and the purpose that I serve in my job is stable, not stuck. Stable means progression. It means slow, methodical progression. I'm on a path towards my progression. If you don't have that rooted yet in your being, in your path of life, then when love comes, or when a relationship comes, it disturbs the career path and it sets people back. This is where we see women going into relationships and then later ending up in poverty. This is where we see men enter relationships and ending up in an abusive cycle. We hear a lot about females being abused. And nobody stands up for it and really speaks out for the men. But just imagine what it's like to be expected to grow up and to be expected to be the provider of all. That expectation, religiously, financially, and morally, is destructive and abusive to a man. It doesn't allow a man to stand on his own 2 feet and to have his own career path and to have his own stable life first. You see that abuse in religious organizations by saying men are like a god and they need to provide for all. That's a high stature to meet, and often men feel like no matter what they do, it is not good enough. So in this culture, we live in a modern society. And even in the ancient societies, both men had their role and women had their role. So it's important when we work with people to always remind women, take a step back and work on your career and allow yourself to get stable there, because it will offer so much more room for you to appreciate a man who's standing right next to you, who is also pursuing his strength in his career. With yourself, as you're developing, you are the one to say what is stable for you. There's no law and order about what it means to be a stable person, in exception for that you feel like you're on a good financial trajectory. This is so important. And this is where we do the majority of our work. And the use of the centinela here is that the centinela can come in and guide you in those little steps and help you mystically and spiritually and nurture your emotions so that you're grounded and you can make effective change in your life. I'll speak to this too. The other issue is that because we live in the modern world, there's this huge expectation to make copious amounts of money. That's not stability either. That's like filling the cup too much towards one side as well. So when we say financially stable, we don't mean rich and, just gluttony for money. And you see that again in the transformational and coaching and also spiritual world, that the more money you have, the more stable you are, and that is not correct. Because if you look at a lot of very wealthy people, they are seriously off in a lot of ways. And this is where people can get into other self-abusive patterns of overworking and a self-abusive pattern of becoming a workaholic and always going towards that goal and doing whatever you can do and not caring about the community around you and just pushing through and succeeding. That is kind of the way that most Europeans and Americans view their spiritual development as well. It's like, I'm going to get that next ceremony, and I'm going to get that next power, and I'm going to get this next thing. This is very simple, and we have so many resources these days to really stabilize this wrong. Once that wrong is stable, then you can move up in your stage of development in life to love, intimacy, and partnership. Love, intimacy, and partnership, when coming from a space of you have your needs met, you know what is humbling, and how you can negotiate and work with a community, and that you're just part of the whole, and your finances and your career path is working and stable. When you come in to a partnership from that frame of mind, you're not going to draw into the relationship all of your fucked upness. You're not going to draw into the relationship the criteria and manipulations and agreements like, I'm empty and I need you to fill this empty space. No, you'll be coming from a whole different field. And that field is a field of adult connection. Your concept of love is based on a fantasy that desires that you bypass reality. So you must come into a connection with another human being knowing that you are autonomous, you are not entangled, but you are in partnership with each other. That phase of development, very rarely do people work up to, but it is possible. From that, there is a fulfillment of unity in knowing someone and allowing someone to know you. This phase of development can be accomplished without switching partners, even if you've entered a partnership in a lesser stage of development. Also, some people find that they want to switch partners because that is what is needed in their life. It's part of their life path. And they realize that the partner that they chose was like a puzzle piece to fit an empty space inside of them. Working through our previous work, we're commanding the Centinela to help us develop our life so that we can make these choices consciously and build a plan of organization around that personal and spiritual development via the guidance of our spirit guide, rather than building a plan and organizing this plan around the needs and the empty spaces and the hopelessness or desperation inside of you. In other words, what we call the construct. Developing a plan that's given to you by your Centinela means that you'll be following that guidance one step at a time, one block at a time, one brick at a time, and it's good work. That's the fourth level of hierarchy of needs, is intimacy, love, and relationship. Once that is stable, one can move up into the next rung, which is altruism. The next rung is when you have accomplished enough in your life that everything is stable all the way up, so that the pyramid is strong. Now you can look at volunteering. You can look at providing healing for others. You can look at altruistic pursuits, making society a better place, implementing the stability that you have in your field of career, and the stability that you have within yourself, and the stability that you have in your intimate relationships, to then work and roll out, creating something to give back to society. This rung of development, this giving to society, is a higher thinking space. And very rarely do people carve out the wisdom and the knowledge and the fortitude, because it requires integrity, commitment, and kindness to really give back to society. But if you look at all the great people you admire, it's really, you admire them because they have accomplished all of this in their life. And they didn't stop there, but now they're giving to others. And that's a great field of work. When you can give to others, you can volunteer, you assist, you say, like, maybe you're a businessman and you've already accomplished so much in your job and in your career path, and you're at the point where you're like, I'm going to give free business classes to all the people that were in the same position that I was in when I started out. And I'm going to take those years of training and hard work and failures and successes, and I'm going to give it to others for free. And so that's that fifth rung of development, is altruism. It's giving to others. Again, that cannot be something that is profoundly affects life and changes life unless there's many years, many years backing it, and there is a sense of accomplishment and integrity with your direction in life. So this is a very high space, and it's really a space of wisdom. And wisdom is a returning to innocence. Wisdom is about returning to the innocence of yourself. And this is where our sentinella work can really, you really work in that sentinella work you want to think of it like you want to get into that for 10 years of your life. And really allow it to unfold, so that when you look back, you maybe don't even know how much you did to support others, but you can look back and see that this got carved out and that your life made an impact, a positive impact on your society. This is why in Sansei we are very much about being patient and kind, very much about your soul search, being responsible, and very much about how are you affecting the environment? How are you affecting your body? How is your health? How is your mental, emotional, spiritual well-being? You can't make a massive positive change in society without all of that as a foundation. So the foundation is always worked on, and you may find that there's times that you go up and then you come back down and you restabilize something and then can continue to kind of build up again. These are rungs, but they're not like a static ladder. You really work them at different levels at different points in your life, and especially as the brain opens and evolves. After that, after the phase of altruism and giving back, then a human mind or a human being can open themselves to the doorways of mystic thinking, mystic living. It's when you overcome, you've given back, you've provided. In the old times in Sansei, we would call this coming into the temple and being an aplasa. You're in a plaza for many, many, many years if you're doing this level of work. You're volunteering. You're showing up. It's not all about you. You're creating, so you're in that like I am going to surrender to this phase so that I can give and listen and give and listen and work and listen, the whole while stabilizing everything else. This is a very high stage, and it takes years to carve, lifetimes to carve out. That's the hierarchy of needs, all the way up to mystic living. People like to try to jump from rung 3 or 2 all the way to the top. And in the tarot and hermetics, the image that we have for this is the tower card. And there's somebody in a great tower. They've really reached that highest height. You know, they're standing at the top of the tower. But the foundation of the tower was not stabilized with the proper balance of its foundation. And the foundation is a combination of earth, air, fire, and water in balance. So that foundation is strong. No, this tower was built on a sand piece of land in the ocean. The sand is rocky. It doesn't have any stability underneath it. And yet the tower got built, and at the top is the human, and the image is that there's a bolt of lightning coming down, striking the tower. God, so to speak, came down and is going to tear down everything that you've built. And the tower crumbles, and the human falls into the sea along with the tower, and everything that was built crashes. And this is when somebody goes into a cycle of blaming and a cycle of pointing fingers and a cycle of being angry, because it's a great disturbance. Much of our society is inside of the tower right now. There's hurricanes and fires and tornadoes and pandemics and unknown diseases and things looming around the corner. Our whole world is in the tower right now. There's violence and protests and people fighting each other because of religious differences and cultural differences, and everything that we've built in this whole world is crumbling, crumbling, crumbling right now. What a beautiful space to be in. And we know, if you're working with us and you're in this course, that we've trained you well in all of those levels of the pyramid. If you look at all the courses you've done, they've actually gone back and re-stabilized each of those levels. Last course being about love, intimacy, and connection. And you don't have to have a partner to have accomplished that. You just have to have accomplished the concepts of it and the knowing of it. But partnership will come. So these things that are going on in the world are highly disruptive. But if you've done your work, as the tower tumbles, what there is to do is to relook at where you stabilize your foundation and you rebuild from a clean foundation once again. We know that if you're in this course, you've already accomplished much of that, and you're in the center of that whirlwind. You're in the center of the storm, and you can build something great regardless of what's happening around you. So working with the Mystadios is elevating off of all of this that's going on the planet. Working with the Centinela is about retraining yourself to stand in a clean path so that you can build that tower, come all the way up, and that you transcend the tower. Once you transcend the tower and there's no more mass destruction, you have really, believe it or not, no need to build another tower, is the great lesson. You have a space of knowing that you will create a foundation, and from that foundation, spirit will flow. And that it's not the structures that you put in place, but it is the conduit of energy that will guide you in life. Free from structure, free from the mortar and the brick and the mortar, free from the need to have so many of these things, which truly you can never hold on to anyways because they do not exist. What you believe exists in form actually is formless. And there is only one thing that exists, which is the conduit and the energy that flows through it. So this is where we are with our work. And the healing that you've been doing by providing the light to yourself and providing the light in the mirror is you've been filling yourself with that energy so that you can build up a new foundation and hit those rungs of the Maslow's pyramid that need continued work on your part. So this week, your teachings are to contemplate where you're at in the Maslow pyramid, what it is that you want to go to work on in there, and to continue to ask your spirit guide to guide you in both the removal and destruction of needless entrapment and to guide you in how to be more true and more clear on your life path. By the way, just a little heads up and wisdom here. The metaphor here is anything you build that's not around your life path, that was your God-given right, it was provided to you when you were born, anything you build outside of your life path will crumble. And there's no way around it. Anything you build that comes from the guidance of your centinela will be free from the structure, and you will build something, but you won't even know exactly what you're building until you've done it. And it's usually more like a rolling forest and a beautiful tree of life rather than a systematic approach to doing things. So I hope that lands for you. That's what I want you to contemplate this week. And I want you to start really getting into, wow, okay, I got it. My centinela is the access to no more things crushing down around me and or being trapped by those structures and systems that I created that were based on ego and misperception of self. Anything you create from self cannot be destroyed because it's true of your nature. Anything that you create that's from your ego can and will eventually get cracked, especially if you're here. Much love and light. We look forward to Q&A, and we will talk to you next week. God bless. Again, this is